Hey, what's up? Zach here, and today I've got the Adidas Adios Pro 3, and as a very astute subscriber put right here, this shoe keeps finding itself onto podiums of marathons, especially at a lot of the major events. And when I saw this comment a little while ago, I kind of delved a little bit deeper into the Adios Pro 3 and kind of why it lends itself into these high mileage PR situations. And I found a lot of things in this shoe that the Adios Pro 3 does that a lot of others don't, and a lot of just really interesting, little ergonomic and biomechanical designs in this shoe that just really lend itself to those types of runs and those types of situations. So let's see what they are. Let's get into it. Now, starting off in the uppers, the Adios Pro 3 obviously is gonna have a little bit more of a minimalist uppers like most modern super shoes do. What I love about Adidas though is they really do find ways to sneak padding into the ankle collar that is pretty substantial. It does give you a decent lockdown. Now, obviously there's a runner's knot in these, which I did use, and I think that if you are looking for a decent lockdown, you at least should be using the back eyelet, if not a full runner's knot on these. And the one thing I did notice is the tongue on the Pro 3s is very flimsy. Even when I was cutting the shoe open, I mean, part of it just fell right off. So it is a little bit less of a substantial tongue. So if you are somebody with a little bit more of a high arch foot, just make sure you watch the fit section, kind of talk about how to make these a little more comfortable for you. Now, the one thing I love about the Adios Pro 3's uppers is the meshing. Now, under the microscope, it does look like a little bit more of a haphazard pattern, but I can tell you, it does have a regularity to it. It does have a method to its madness. This loop and hook system that it uses goes all the way from the heel to the forefoot. And what it does is it creates this almost chain linking of the shoe, but because it's a hook and loop, it allows the shoe to just flow a little bit easier, make it bend a little bit easier, and just kind of give you a more smooth gait cycle. And because that meshing is so disproportionately strong for how porous it is, you look at the breathability test on these, they only heated up 87.3 degrees, cooled down another 35.4 degrees. And it just shows, when you can get an upper this minimal, but with this strength, you can really just make hot air just blow right out of them. When I had my hand over it, the entire shoe was expelling heat. So that TPU meshing in there really, it is doing quite a bit for your foot, especially over the long hauls of a race, especially in the really, really hot temperatures. Your feet are gonna stay a lot cooler in these versus something else that might wanna trap some more heat. And on the upper durability test, 10-second tie grit sandpaper, I mean, the burr wants to get through that meshing. You can kind of start to see the white of the drag guard, but it doesn't get all the way through it. However, these are road running shoes, so I really wouldn't be taking these through the forest anytime soon. But I will say, to more blunt force containment, for how light they are, the durability in these uppers is pretty darn good. The only thing that, like I said, I would watch out for would be number one, the laces, number two, the tongue. And speaking of that lockdown, I do love the reinforcement of the lace line that goes all the way up here into the ankle collar. But then down below, you get these two little loops here for the outrigger lace eyelets. They're actually reinforced with padding underneath, and it goes into this little bit of a mesh layer under there. So for a shoe so minimalist, the lockdown is actually really good. But getting into the midsole teardown, the Adios Pro 3 is a surprisingly simple midsole, say that 5 times fast, but it's just 2 slabs of Light Strike Pro plus these energy rods that go all the way from the heel into the forefoot. Now when we get to the runability section, I'll kind of show how these all interact with each other to make this such an effective shoe to run. But it doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles that the Prime X Strung does. But, just the way they utilize the technology in the shoe makes this just such a crazy elite shoe. Now, when you look at the Light Strike Pro, that is a thermoplastic polyester elastomer, a very elastic plastic. If you look at it under the microscope, you can see it's kind of shimmering under there with kind of, more reflective plastic under there, but it's a super light, super bouncy foam. You look at it on the bounce height test, 38 centimeters in the heel, and then it gets 41 centimeters in the forefoot. And I think in the heel, the ball bearing may have been hitting the energy rod somewhere there, so it may have actually dampened a little bit. So I actually think probably would have gotten a little bit more. But for how light the shoe is and just how much responsiveness the Light Strike Pro has, you can start to see where kind of this shoe is going with its elite performance. Now, getting into the outsole tread, this will also tie into some of the midsole components. However, it is just 2 slabs of racing skids. This is an indented rubber pattern, which means it does not have little flanges of rubber popping up. It's just all, like I said, flat racing skids with indentations for grip. However, because these are road shoes, that's kind of what they're meant to be. They're just meant to not be a bottom heavy rubber, trying to save weight wherever you can. And when we talk about the runability, once again, with the striking patterns of this, kind of see why that's happening. Now you also get one little stabilizer here in the rear foot underneath of this rubber here, just to give it a little bit more stability underfoot. However, you do have strategic cutouts here in the heel, lateral rear foot, as well as in the lateral forefoot. That is because, like I said, they're trying to save weight in places they know that someone wearing these is not going to strike. It also allows the shoe to glide a little bit easier, be a little bit more aerodynamic. Now, if you look at these two slabs of rubber, the midfoot and the rear foot rubber durometer is a little bit lower than in the forefoot rubber, where you're actually going to get some twisting and shearing on these. However, if you look at the outsole durability test, 10 seconds high grit sandpaper, I mean, the burr does not get through this rubber. I mean, maybe almost a millimeter of damage on both rubbers. So Continental obviously is putting some sort of additive in this to allow it to be so thin, so flat, and have a softer durometer, but also kind of resist some wear. So you see this on a lot of elite running shoes where they put kind of all their engineering into the additives in the rubber to make it, you know, less resistant to wear versus making it heavier and harder and weighing you down from the bottom. And speaking of not weighing you down, if you look at the speed ratio of the Adios Pro 3, it comes in at a 4.37, which, like for a lot of these super shoes, is just nuts. This shoe has such a crazy bounce to weight or launch to weight ratio. Plus those energy rods in there, almost like kind of directing the flow of energy in the shoe. These shoes are lightning fast for their profile. A couple things though you gotta watch out for in the fit of the Adios Pro 3, obviously, is how streamlined the fit is. You know, obviously it's meant to be a streamlined shoe. It's not meant to be a clunker. Also, just the profile of arches that they fit the best. Now, a narrow and medium foot in these, I think you just go true to size. A wide, or 2E, I should say, probably should be going up that half size in these. Now, if you are somebody with a higher arch foot, I probably would be putting some sort of moleskin or padding, kind of foam adhesive padding underneath of the tongue of these, because the laces will start to dig into that anterior ankle or more proximal midfoot, especially if you are someone, like I said, with a higher arch in these. If you do put a little bit of padding in there, share the weight in them, or just change the laces to something a little bit more broad. Might be a little harder to get through the eyelets, but if you can do that, they will be a lot more comfortable for you. Now, if you are somebody with a snake bitten foot, you can get a razor thin, more streamlined custom orthotic in these. I think it'll lock down okay. A bulkier orthotic in these, I just think is just gonna mess up the whole ratio of the shoe. Now, if you are somebody with ball of foot pain or heel pain, it's actually going to be pretty decent if you're a certain type of striker, just because number one, the stack of foam as well as the distribution of foam, as well as energy rods, kind of protecting the ball and heel of your foot, kind of where they sit within that foam. However, if you're somebody that's more of a heel striker, you might find yourself twisting and kind of straining a little bit that heel. So I'd say anything ball of foot, these are going to be great. And if you are someone that really needs those custom orthotics in there, needs a bulkier custom orthotic, you just might want to look somewhere else in the Adidas family if you're wanting to go for like this type of product. And with that being said about the heel striking, that brings me to the runnability of the Adios Pro 3 and, you know, why it's getting on so many marathon podiums. If you're a heel striker, I don't think these are a great shoe for you. Number one, because the geometry of the midsole, when you're striking heel, it almost feels like you're then trying to have to go up a hill when you strike in these. They're also not very stable for a heel striker too, because of all the cutouts and how streamlined it is. Once you strike that heel, it really does feel like there's a wave cresting over you. Now that completely changes once you go to midfoot to forefoot striking on these, which is what it's meant for, a very efficient elite run. Now what that does is, I was actually talking about this in the members video, is when I was just kind of messing around with them, kind of playing around with the striking and just kind of seeing how they roll when I cut them open. When you strike distal midfoot to forefoot, what happens is you can actually feel the energy kind of, or just the force going back through those energy rods into the heel and kind of giving you a little bit of a kick. And not just because it has, you know, a nice kind of rocking shape here in the forefoot, a really nice kind of gliding shape. You can really feel just that snap in the heel of it. Every time you get to that last phase of stance in your running gait cycle, the back of the shoe is literally pushing you forward. And, you know, because the energy rods don't really go anywhere near the heel in them, all that energy return is coming to you in the form of really soft Light Strike Pro. So it's not like some shoes that give you a ton of energy return, but it feels like a brick underneath of your foot. So by mile 8 or 9, you know, you're just wanting to go nuts because the shoe is kind of starting to hurt you really no matter where you strike it. Whereas in these, you could wear them forever and they're still going to give you that great kickback without any of the pain. And I think that's why you see them on so many marathoners' feet. I think that's why you see them on so many podiums. Because if you can give these the right strike, and if you can give these a consistent, really kind of efficient strike, they're going to give you that energy return mile after mile after mile, because TPEE foam is also ridiculously strong for its weight. So I think that's why these are definitely not for everybody. If you're someone that, you know, likes to more proximal midfoot strike or heel strike, you're not going to see any of the benefits of these. And if you are someone that has that right pattern, I think these can also mask some endurance issues. You know, if you're someone that does get a little bit wary in those upper miles, you know, trying to hit a PR or trying to keep up pace, I think these more than some others will kind of keep you a little bit more fresh from the uppers all the way down to the midsole and the outsole rubber versus maybe some other shoes. But please let me know in the comments down below if you've had any experience with the Adios Pro 3, if you like that profile of shoe, or if they just one that just wasn't working for you. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see the older sibling to the Adios Pro 3 go under the knife, the Adidas Prime X Strung, which is nuts once you cut them open, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.